Hello, welcome to another episode of Insane Asylum. Tonight, my guest is Nick Mulae. How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm waiting for this weather to go away. I'm ready for winter to finish, but we know that ain't going to happen for a couple months. But you
It
know,
almost feels more like it honestly is a little bit hard to believe that it's even January to begin with, just with the weather, because I went outside, like especially when I got back home from work today. I looked outside thinking, oh man, this does not feel like felt more like September, honestly, because we had
yeah,
a little bit of a wind and there was like leaves blowing around.
yeah. It it kind of gives the feel the cabin fever for me, It was nice enough where I actually got out and took the dog for a walk before the rain set in. But they're like, I'm seeing all these paracons and stuff coming up for, May and June and, March and April and all of that. And it's like, man, come on, you know?
I've even seen one that I'm actually going to be going to. There's even one that's happening near the end of March, as a matter of fact, which is the Obscura Paracon. That which is also not far. That one is just so in case you want to check it out. That one is going to be in. I think it was going to be out. I think it was going to be out in DeKalb. I have to go. Yeah, I think it was going to be out in DeKalb at the Northern Illinois University College. So the castle, if you will. So hey, Kate, good to see you.
I'm just going to say that must be Kate, but it doesn't say Kate.
Yeah, it's definitely her. I've grown it. I know she had a different name before that, but with this one, I've grown accustomed to. So once I see that, I know. And that picture is of her cat Machi, so I know exactly who that is.
Yeah. So, I saw Jack's got his thing going already too. It,
Correct.
I'm hoping to make it there this year again. I got a bone to pick. Well, no, not a bone to pick. I had that, and I hope you guys see this still. But when I had the Chad Lewis on that one time, the feed only showed the intro, and after that, it was like a blank screen. You couldn't even hear us. So I got to try to
Yeah.
get him to come back on. That was no easy task.
Oh, I'm sure it wasn't. And I'm sure, if he enjoyed being on your show, there's a good likely chance he'll probably come back.
He's down in Florida now. He's a busy guy. I mean, he's traveling a lot. You know, doing a thing
Uh,
on the skunk ape.
okay. I was gonna say I didn't know that he was down in Florida, but I'm thinking to myself, wait a second. He's down in Florida. He's
Well,
got to
he's
be
from
involved in that cryptid.
Wisconsin, but he travels a lot so that he can do those things on. He writes some books. He's got some good ones out there.
Yeah, he does. I've actually been wanting to get one of his books. I was going to get it 2 years ago, but unfortunately, I just didn't have enough to spend. I was going to get his latest book, which was on the big money monster down in Southern Illinois,
Oh,
which he also attended the festival down there. I think, in fact, I think he was honestly the only real kind of cryptid paranormal investigator that I knew of that went down to it, because everybody else that was there, I've never seen or met before.
yeah. I don't. His newest book is not that now. It's something else. I forgot. I think it's more about the lake monsters.
Okay, that makes sense.
But so, what do you got planned coming up? I know you quit Fear Fans.
So I mean, to start off with things, I'm still going to be doing, obviously the Thursday and Friday afternoon and night shows, and also sometimes the Wednesday show, which I guess you can kind of say it's two of them. I'm trying to bring back Nick Files, but also, as you know, I've been on Paranormal Mischief a few times, which thankfully is not always every week, which does save me the trouble, honestly. But apart from podcasts, like as we kind of just spoke about, I do have a number of Paracons that I am planning on attending this year, including both Obscura and the Chicago one. So I'm really looking forward to those ones. But I am also going to try to get to a couple newer ones that I haven't been out to because for the longest time I've been wanting to expand to other new. I mean, yeah, you do get some of the same folks, which is always fine with me. But
But
it's always great when you meet new faces as well.
well, then I think you need to learn how to drive.
Yeah, that too. Well, it's also funny. I mean, I know that's important, but but also in addition to that too, um, there also might be a partial change for myself as far as these visitations are concerned, because some of my friends are now also interested in wanting to go on to these things, which is great for kind of both me and also Tom McNicholas's standpoint, because you know because I'll give him credit. Tom does a lot of the driving, and I'm sure it's got to be very exhausting for him. So if we had a few other people, if we had a few other people involved, especially for going on these long trips, that would definitely save him the trouble and give him the much deserved rest and break that he certainly needs and that he certainly deserves.
Yeah, yeah, I'm gonna be traveling to a lot more of them too this year.
Yeah, because there's like one that does sound really interesting, and because I'm already starting to see advertisements about this. It's actually something known as the Central Kansas Paracon. And in fact, one of our former show hosts, Jason Walker, he's from Oklahoma. He is among those that's going to be at this event. Now, to give exactly where in Kansas, it's not necessarily like in the central part of the state, but it's kind of in the lower central area,
That's perfect.
not far from the Kansas Oklahoma border. It's down in downtown Hutchinson. So, but that one's not till September. So I got enough time to really kind of look at how things are a couple months from now. And also, in addition to Paracons, I'm finally also going to be going on a couple more investigations throughout this year, which, because again, compared to last year, yeah, I did a few, but I didn't really do as many as I was hoping to, especially since last year was my 20th year in the paranormal field. So this year will kind of make up for it. As of right now, I got I would say about 5 or 6 different investigation spots that I plan to be going on later this year. Pickle Tom's in the chat.
Yeah,
Yeah, I got about 5 or 6 different investigations coming up for this year. So I'm really looking forward to it. It'll be good. It'll be great to getting officially back into the game.
he's talking about you there.
Unfortunately, I can't really see it that well because I'm
He
using
says,
the phone this time.
Whoops. He says, who the hell is this guy? He looks weird, like the kind of guy that would sleep in another man's bed. LOL.
He's referred to again, with Minecraft.
Minecraft.
He never gives up that memory. But you know what? Hey, I'm having fun with it.
Hey, it's just a game, anyways.
Yeah, it is. Well, to him, it's more than just a game. But yeah, it is for the most part. I just see it as like any other game that I play.
You know, I couldn't get into it. I tried. So
Some people enjoy it, others don't. I mean,
it's
it's
the it's the way the game is designed. It's too like pixelated. It looks so old school.
right, exactly. Well, that is, I will give credit to that too, is that it has kind of like the throwback to like the old arcade games where it has
Yeah,
that pixelated look to it. So
right.
it is pretty cool, having that nostalgic kind of feel to it.
Um, so, what kind of investigations you plan on doing this year?
So one of them that I've been trying to well, it's not necessarily I've been trying to get back to. It's just because again my schedule has been so busy. One of the locations I would like to get back to is, and they told me I can come back and investigate anytime. Is It was when we investigated that bar about 2 years ago. I want to say the Bad Attitude Bar and Grill, which is up further north, about an hour from me. And the woman who owns this place, she wants this place to become like a regular investigation spot, not only just for myself, but also for other paranormal teams out there too. I mean, she's even the kind of person she even wants to have this place, featured on the television shows. She really is opening this up as a haunted attraction. And I was fortunate enough a few years ago to be the very first investigator, along with those that were with me, to investigate this place. So I've been wanting to go back ever since. Hopefully, we'll try and schedule a time to go. But also, in addition to that, too, I know we're going to be going back to the Old Lake County Jail. I think we were going to do that possibly during the spring. Um, Jeremy, of course, is the one that kind of helps put those together. So that is something I'm still waiting to hear details on. And also, I believe during the Obscura Paracon, now normally I don't really do a lot of the public investigations, but I think this might be it might be a small group, so it shouldn't be too bad. And again, another location I've investigated before is I might be investigating the Egyptian Theater in DeKalb, Illinois, which is a really great spot, which I'm glad we're doing it during the month of March because the last time I did it, which was back in 2019, we did it during the height of summer, and there was no air conditioning in this
Oh,
building.
wow.
It was hot as hell. I mean, I have pictures of me that I couldn't even wear my vest. All I could wear was my tank top. That's how
Yeah,
hot it
you know,
was.
those vests, I've had to take them off because mine's pretty heavy, and I'm sure yours is too. But when you got it like over like flannel, like I do, sometimes because of the weather out, but my God, some of those places I went to that one that was Rock Island.
Oh, Rock. Oh, God. Yeah, that's like I was just thinking about like, imagine like this was Rock Island, but instead you're not only investigating it, but you're staying there for quite a long time, and
Mhm.
and you don't have any fans or anything like that with you.
Oh,
So trying to go outside, there's
there
nowhere
was
to escape to.
yeah, and there's no AC inside, so you got all the heat from the body heat from all the bodies in the building,
Yep.
and it was set on this year, or well, this year, last year, it was on one of the hottest days of the year. It was, and no wind. So there
Yeah.
was no wind to help cool you down when you went outside. Man, my vest didn't last long. Like, god damn, it, it's
Yeah.
it gets pretty bad sometimes. But you know, those are the places though that tend not to charge.
Right.
A lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
$10 or whatever. It helps for the cleanup fee or the crew, or helps them so they can keep renting the building every year, whatever. But some of these places are just in it for the money.
Yeah. Like
I've
it's one.
I've seen a couple of those Paracons where they were charging 65 and up.
Like it's one I understand from the perspective like if it is expensive, like if they really are for like if it's for a building that they're trying to rebuild and restore, that's one thing.
Well,
Like I understand, but that also goes to show you too that in spite of such high prices like that, that also kind of means that those prices will not be like that forever because eventually once the building is fixed up, they'll probably start lowering those prices
yeah,
because they got the money that they needed to help restore and rebuild the place.
but
But
you're
yeah,
talking,
unfortunately there's other places out there that I definitely know of that
you know,
yeah,
they're just in it for the money.
yeah, you know the old saying, money talks. And
You know,
that's the unfortunate part.
I don't want to kind of oust the place, you know, but there's a place in Wisconsin, and it's a bar, okay? And I
Hmm.
was going to go there for one of their, events, and found out that it costs a lot of money.
Hmm.
And, they didn't even, this is to restore the place. They should, if they're going to do that, they should put it in the advertisement, or, saying all
Oh,
proceeds go to restore, you know, but this place doesn't need that kind of work. I think,
Right, right.
and then I've heard the stories about it, and I've heard some other stories from some other people. I think the people that own the place have kind of devised, you know, how can I put this? They hook up some little things here and there to make it look like it's more haunted than it really is.
Yeah, because like even when I went to this new location, the Bad Attitude Bar and Grill, the owner of that place, she was not trying to make it like it was like super haunted or anything. She only just came up to us and told us what she knew about the location with what's been going on. And, somebody like that knows how, they know how to tell you the legitimacy of a location. And we'll admit, it was kind of a tough location to investigate because first off, it's definitely one of the smallest locations I've ever done. I mean, because all we could investigate for the most part was just the ups because there was a sleeping quarter up on the second floor. That was the only place that we could investigate because downstairs you have the bar and of course, it was an operation.
Yeah,
So it kind of made things difficult, but yet still, we had, you know, someone like her really knew how to tell, like what a location really is like with as far as paranormal activities are concerned. In fact, I almost forgot to mention this. In addition of trying to open it up for more investigators, she also wants to appear as a guest on some of these shows, in the future. So I would highly recommend also having her on as a future guest.
yeah.
But yeah,
I
like,
There's a bar here. Oh, what was it? It's an Irish bar. It was Lions Inn or something.
oh, Lions Den. Yeah, you know what? I've actually heard of that place. Yeah, yeah.
It's here in Watertown. Okay, and I met the owners. They're real nice. Older couple, real nice. And they had construction going on the second floor and the third floor, and that's where we went and investigated. But when we were there, the bar was closed. They were just
Hmm.
getting ready for the day. So we went like early afternoon.
Hmm.
So so we went and investigated that place. It was real quiet, and it you don't need a whole lot because they had all the old pictures from back when there was like horse and buggies, and it was just a dirt road in front of the building. That's how old this place is. They show pictures of the outside, and a couple of those pictures that were taken back in 1787 or whatever, it was right around that time, the late 1700s, that you could see like a ghost image,
Oh, wow. And that's
you know, of a,
relatively rare to have something like that, especially back then.
and it was hanging on the wall, and you take them down and you show the pictures, and we're like, wow, wait a minute, there's something else there. And you could see right through it, through the dog. It was like two dogs, and one of them you could see through, you could see the person's leg through him, you know,
Wow.
and it's like, how the hell do you do that and make that happen in the late 1700s?
Well, and not to mention, because you do have your,
You can't
uh,
really fake the pictures, is what I'm
that's
saying.
yeah, and that's what I was actually about to say. Ironically, I'm thinking because you still have your share of skeptics out there who
Hmm.
try to do everything they can to debunk it, saying, "Oh, that's just Photoshop," or "This was just added, post production." I think, how on earth are you able to Photoshop, especially from something that was taken over 200 years ago?
Yeah, technology wasn't that great. You
Yeah,
know,
in fact, um,
cameras sucked.
yeah, well, in fact, I just realized something. Now that we're in 2026, most people don't realize this. The very first photograph that was like true photograph that was ever taken of anything was ironically exactly 200 years ago in 1826. So we've now been, so now we've officially evolved through 200 years of photography.
Uh,
So, and now the original photograph that was taken back then, unfortunately, as you can imagine, that pretty much has been lost to time. But some, people had taken pictures of the original image before before it truly disappeared. So you can still find an image of that original photo, like on Google Image or something like that. But still, it's just incredible to think that we've gone through 200 years of photography, and for something like that that must have been taken, especially back then, it must have been a phenomenal find, especially, back in those days when, you know, yeah, we did have a few of our so-called paranormal ancestors back then, but very few, because even back then the paranormal, if you will, was still, very heavily tabooed at that time. It wasn't, not to the point where
oh
people were being
man,
executed, but it was still, frowned upon back then.
uh, what the fuck? We got booted off Facebook.
Oh, really?
So I don't know if you can see that where it's streaming to above.
Unfortunately, I can't because, like I said,
One of
because
them
I'm doing
went.
this on my phone.
The one that's going to my Facebook page turned red.
Oh,
The connection
yeah,
was disconnected. We weren't able to stream to that destination. What the fuck? More problem.
yeah,
Oh well. At least it's going to YouTube.
yeah. It's
That counts.
broadcasting in some way, shape, or form. But then again, we were going to make that transition to move away from Facebook anyway. So, at this point, to me, it just doesn't really. It's just not that big of a deal to me anymore.
So I got a question for you, and this isn't really a paranormal question.
hmm
What do you think about conspiracy theories?
So, when it comes to conspiracy theories, I kind of have mixed kind of
Okay,
feelings for it, because sometimes you do want to jump into the things that you believe might be going on, but of course you also want to be careful
well,
about finding out too that
all
it's
right.
not true.
Let me be more specific. All right. Today is somebody's
January 8th.
birthday,
Oh, it is?
and he's been dead since 1977, supposedly. Okay.
Oh, I think I know where this is going. Yep, yep.
And I was just, because it was his day, I was watching a couple of his movies and stuff. But there's all these conspiracies, and I haven't seen anything really about it lately. But they think this guy, Bob Joyce, could be him. But the guy looks like him a lot. But I think the guy that actually is him, if he's still alive, is living at Graceland. Because part of Graceland is still off limits, from
hmm
what I understand.
Yeah, I know exactly who you're referring to about the whole conspiracy if Elvis Presley,
Yeah.
is
You,
still alive. You know, it's hard to really say. I mean, again, I've even seen documentaries on it. Um, I mean, it is very likely because, for a guy like Elvis, I mean, you definitely can't help but feel sorry for him, especially in the later part of his life, because,
well,
you know,
he
he
couldn't
had
go
so,
anywhere without getting like mugged by fans.
yeah, like he could not enjoy just having simple time to himself with his family. I mean, it must have been such a huge stress burner for him
I had to
that,
rent out a whole movie theater just to go watch a movie.
yeah, or even just simply going on a walk. He
Yeah,
still
couldn't do
couldn't
it.
walk, he still couldn't go anywhere without having people always watching him. And that kind of fills the theory that, because you especially in this day and age, with the younger generation out there, you got your kids and teenagers out there who always are like saying, "Oh, I want to be this famous when I grow up." Well, unfortunately, once when the reality hits and you become this famous icon, yeah, it might be exciting and fun for a while, but it does get tiring, and it just is the classic example that being famous sucks. So, in the case with Elvis, I couldn't see why he could have faked his death. But of course, with all due respect, at the same time, though, um, the reality too is that even if he is still alive, just like any other human being, we're not going to be around forever. So even if he is still alive, eventually he is going to be gone.
Yeah,
So
he'd have to be. Let's see,
he was
uh,
born in 1935.
35
So
on this
yeah,
day.
so that would make him 91 years old.
Yeah, and that's it was a little easier to believe when he was like 80, and they were showing the videos from Graceland where there was like they said it was a caretaker,
Hmm.
but he if you think about when like Lisa Marie passed away and they had her funeral there, you would think all caretakers and stuff would be asked to not be in the field of anything,
Hmm.
but this guy walked right by during oh, I can't even think of her name. Royalty. She was there giving a speech, you know, about how she knew Lisa Marie. And just as that was going on, this guy walked by and looked just like him. But see, I have the theory. I don't know. I don't think he's still alive anymore. If he was, if he is, I mean, if he actually died, they'd have to say, well, then he died. But then, you know, they couldn't say that he really died if he died. But
Right.
he's been under federal witness protection most of this time
Hmm.
because there was a lot of mafia threats towards his life because he protected and helped take, in the 70s, he was hiding witnesses that helped the government take down the mafia.
Right. Right.
And they've got thousands and thousands of pages, and they've all come out and released. Most of them are redacted, but they're all death threats.
Right. Well, there's also someone similar like that. I won't go into too much detail about it. And this is a guy who's still alive. He's in this case, he's not a celebrity. This is actually someone that to this day he has to still remain a man in hiding. It was this guy who he was actually a member of one of the most feared gangs, not
Oh,
only just in Southern California, but also in the world. He was an active member of the Mexican mafia for 12 years back in the 70s.
well, that
And
yeah, and you got the biker gangs, the people that
yeah,
help take them down.
well, in this case, when you're talking about like a gang like the Mexican Mafia, that's even worse than any of the gangs or biker gangs combined because they're a death squad, literally. They will literally take you out even for the most slightest issue. And so this guy, he was only 20 years old when he joined back in 1969. And he actually was, for the longest time, one of the gang's most brutal enforcers. But then by the early 1980s, as he was sent to prison numerous times with nothing but time on his, with nothing but time on his hands. And so he just realized that, you know, something's changed in him, especially when it came to his victims, where he shot him, whether he stabbed him, regardless, just something changed in him, even though he kind of had the capacity of being kind of like a serial killer because he did kill about half a dozen individuals, but then he decided that I guess with the remaining humanity that he had left within him, that he decided to turn on the gang, which of course would permanently place him on their death list. And he said later on that he said that he was able to help prosecute 36 different members. Most of them were the heavyweights of the Mexican mafia. And even though that was huge, Mexican mafia, of course, to this day are still in operation, are
Well,
showing no signs of slowing down. But to this day, he has to stay in protective custody because there's even after 40 years, they're still trying to get him.
it's like the Hells Angels.
Yeah, they
You
never
know,
forget. Oh yeah,
you
they
know,
never forget. They
they've been
never forget.
around for a long time, and I've watched these documentaries, and unfortunately, because of the way things are going, I lost three cable channels,
Yeah, yeah. I think that's
and
the
one of
same
them
with
was
us.
one of them was one of my favorites because it had like, all this stuff about the Hells Angels and stuff like
Hmm.
this, and it was talking with former members because they turned on their you know
Either they turned, or some of them did leave in good standing. So you might also have some of those
yeah,
who have
some
retired
lost
from
in
the,
good
retired
standings,
from the
but
group.
once the documentary comes out, those good standings go down the drain because now you're telling secrets that they don't want you to tell.
Right, yeah, because and it's not just the Hells Angels. It's usually for a lot of these clubs. Like when you're a part of one of those clubs, you know certain things that only other members know. Like literally, you are to die with those secrets.
Well, yeah, and that like they talk about all of this stuff, and you know what? I'd rather deal with some of the stuff that happened in the past than what goes on today. You know.
Right, right. Because even with the group like that, um, I still you still have to respect them at the end of the day, because you also have to remember too that not all of them are joining to, because there are still some out there that are still law-abiding citizens out
Well,
there.
yeah, there's a group here in Madison that we always joked about that were on the police department's payroll.
Oh, okay, so one of those type of, okay, one, because I know,
Well,
yeah, even the
most
police department have their own clubs too.
well, no, this isn't one that was police department. They weren't ex. Maybe a couple of them might be or retired or whatever, but they were mostly teachers, lawyers, doctors.
Oh, okay,
High
okay.
paying jobs. Okay,
Hmm.
and they'd go around and in the 70s. I grew up in a very low income bracket, so we lived in low income housing, and this we moved to the west side of Madison in this low income housing that was brand new. I mean, the parking lot was still gravel. Okay,
Hmm.
CC riders came in with not well, some of them came in on their bikes, but there was lumber trucks following them, and they built like 3 playgrounds for the community, for
Hmm.
that low income neighborhood.
Right, right.
And then I got to know one that was really good, that they'd pass out cards in bars. If you got a drug problem or drinking problem, give us a call, we can help. Don't drive home, stuff like this. And they'd rent my video store, the back end of my video store, because it was like an arcade back there,
Oh, okay.
with a pool table, a dartboard, and stuff. After hours, and they'd rent that so that they could be close by to a lot of these east side bars, so that if somebody called them, they could go help.
Well, that's
You
pretty
know.
good to know.
And they'd order pizza and bring in a whole cooler of soda and all this shit, clean up,
That's
pay.
awesome.
I'd get the rent plus a bunch of money. It was a nice little weekend thing to do every now and then. But I got to know some of these bikers like that.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool either way. And
You know,
I've even noticed, like, obviously you've seen it, we both seen it for ourselves, that there even are a few bikers out there that are paranormal investigators. Like we saw that last year with uh I forgot what their team name was, but they were at the Chicago Paranormal Convention, and the fact we were able to like get a full group picture of all our colors,
yeah,
our vests. That was pretty cool. I mean, that was, in my personal opinion, that was probably almost as close as like a paranormal themed motorcycle club as you could ever get. So that was awesome.
that picture, if I'm not mistaken, I've actually got that somewheres.
I know I used it also for a profile picture too.
Yeah, my hard drives are so big, so full of things. I don't trying to find them. Yeah, Yeah, if I would have thought about that one, I would have brought that up earlier. But yeah, you got like your profile picture. It's like and I know who those other two were. Jeff and Lorelei.
That's who they were. I just can't remember their actual team name, but yeah, that's who I was referring to.
Uh, Boo Boo Cruz. Boo. Anyway,
Oh no, Booze Cruise. That's what it was. Yeah,
yeah. So yeah, we all got the vest. You know. Yeah. See, I get nervous when I come to Chicago because of that.
yeah,
You
because
know,
unfortunately, this
I
is
mean,
the territory of the outlaws. We
I
have
followed
those
all
people.
the rules and stuff, but still, you never know if one of them might get a bug in their butt, and I saw quite a few of them down there the last couple of times I was, driving around Chicago, for
Yeah,
that
this.
convention. When that convention took place, I there was a gas station we pulled in. There was like 10 of them there.
Yeah, there's that they've always called Chicago their home territory. I mean, in fact, they're the oldest running outlaw motorcycle club in the world. They've been running since 1935,
You know,
and
and it's the only one
they
I've seen down there.
yeah, they've had full control over the state of Illinois since their formation. In fact, when they first formed back in 1935, they formed up in McCook, Illinois. So that is where it pretty much all began. And as you can imagine, and to this day they still are, they are a bitter rival of the Hells Angels, especially back in the 90s. There was a huge biker war that occurred here in Chicago between the Outlaws and the Hells Angels because the Hells Angels were the Hells Angels were trying to expand and create more chapters, and they wanted to create a chapter here for Chicago. In fact, they had three potential locations that they would have for the Chicago area, but that drove the Outlaws crazy because again, this was an area that they always deemed theirs, and so they fought back. I mean, it was some of the bloodiest biker wars that's ever occurred, and eventually things did settle down near the end of the 90s. But the truce that did exact, I mean that did exist. It was only brief. It wasn't long before they started fighting again. And at this point, I could say, from what I understand, is the Outlaws essentially gave the Hells Angels an ultimatum. It's one of the few times that they had no choice but to obey their orders. They were telling them either you die or you get out of here. And at this point, the vast majority of Hells Angels for the state of Illinois and Chicago have pretty much been chased off by the Outlaws. So
Well,
it's I think it's safe to say that they've reclaimed their territory back.
that's like I said. Most of the time when I drive through there, and this last summer, I mean, we were in Chicago a few times, three, four times, easy, and every time, that's all I saw was the Outlaws.
Yeah,
Mm.
and they're down in Southern Illinois too, because like I've been down like when I used to attend Mike Ricksecker's Haunted Road Media Paracon, which was down in Alton, it wasn't just in the Chicago area. They have them down in Southern Illinois too. So they're pretty much up and down the state.
Well, I'm not done with Illinois yet. You
No, I'm
know,
sure there's a lot to check out.
I got a place. It's like, would we figure it was like 6.5 hours from us. All right, and that's where I want to go. And it's not a paranormal place, but just for the shits and giggles of it, there's a place called Metropolis, Illinois.
Yes, I've heard of that town.
And then they got like the Superman stat,
Hmm.
that's where Daily Planet supposedly is, And Smallville, the reason I brought that up is because I've been binge watching Smallville because cable sucks lately. But that takes place Smallville, Kansas. That's like a fake town, but Metropolis is kind of real. You know,
Yeah, it is. I've never been down there, but I do know of the town's existence.
So this is the one I want to get to. I'll bring up the thing because I got the graphic here somewhere. Here we go. This is the one I want to get to this year.
Oh, Wisconsin's largest and paranormal. I heard of a couple things about it, and that's something that I'm interested in attending too. And Fond du Lac, from where I live, that is it's definitely not far from me. I would say that's probably about maybe an
Well,
hour and a half away.
Fond du Lac, I don't know how far. I know it's about an hour away, hour 2 hours away maybe from where I am.
Okay, so pretty much probably the same duration as from
Maybe a
my
little
house. I'm
bit
actually
more.
looking it up right now. Okay, so it's about 2 hours away. So
Yeah.
it's not terrible. I mean, for me, we would have to pass through Milwaukee to get to Fond du Lac.
Yeah. Oh, what the hell? Anyway, yeah, that's the one I'm looking forward to going to this time around. Last year I didn't make it, but this year Tobias Wayland is supposed to be there, and a couple of other people. So it's like a chance to meet some people that I haven't actually met yet. I've had them on my podcast, but I haven't met them in person. You know,
Right. That's kind of like what it is with a lot of these guests that we have. It's like, in fact, someone who I just brought up, Mike Ricksecker. He was doing his own podcast. Oh, I think he's actually been getting back into doing his own podcasting recently. His show. He used to do a show, Edge of the Rabbit Hole. Um, but what was funny was that it wasn't until a few years ago that this happened. I forgot who her name was, but she had been on the. Oh, she's the. Oh my God, it's killing me. It's like right in front. She's Oh, okay, I can't remember her first name, but she's the daughter of. Oh my God, I can't even. He passed away in 2009. He was a huge paranormal. Oh, the Hoser Files. Yeah, I just can't remember her name, but she was the daughter of the guy that used to do a lot of this kind of stuff. And what's funny was that Mike had talked about that he had known her for like 10 years, for like a decade. And it wasn't until a few years ago that they finally actually met in person, which, I mean, not only, it is funny when you think about it, but it's awesome at the same time that they finally have the opportunity of meeting each other in person.
hmm
And
that
there's still a lot of people in this field like myself that I have yet to have met in person myself, especially those who live in other countries.
well, yeah, that and that's what I tried to make a point, explaining it to somebody. Going to these paracons is a way to meet people and make connections.
Hmm.
You know, I've got a whole. This is just from this last summer, and it's probably not even all of them.
Yeah, there's just like so many of them. And it's also great to see that there's new paracons being put together for other areas that they've never had them before. I've
And these
already
are
seen
all
like for
from the people I met. There's
right.
one. You know, and I talked to him, and it's like, yeah, you've yet to. These are people that I feel that would make a good guest on my show.
Yes.
You
Well,
know,
and when you also think about it too, it's also not just, just areas throughout the country in general. Again, even some of these other countries are now starting to put their own paracons together. Like we're starting to see that, of course, not surprisingly in the UK.
yeah,
I've seen
but I ain't going to get
in,
to another country. Not
yeah, I know it's
in
tough.
this
Uh,
lifetime.
yeah, I mean, even another country that again you would never even think twice that something like this would put together. There was even a couple paracons that have been going on in Indonesia. So even
Oh,
Asia has kind of stepped in. And I even had one investigator from the Philippines messaged me a few years ago asking, saying like, hey, would it be possible for you guys to come out here and start a Paracon here? We'd love, because obviously a country like that, they don't. Yeah, you may have your share of investigators over there, but they don't really know exactly how to start. They don't really know how to start a Paracon. So I responded back saying, I would love to come out and help you guys out with that. That would be awesome. So that way, eventually they can start doing their own events independently. But once again, you're making those connections, with them.
Hmm. Yep. That you know that's got to be tough though.
It's
Just
got to be.
you have to get a passport and all that other shit. But to sit there and uh, do all that work is hard enough.
Yeah, it's the pain in the ass, especially in this day
You
and
know,
age. I mean, it used to not
I
be,
can't
but
imagine what Jack goes through doing the one that he does in Chicago. That one
yeah,
that you know, I mean, you got to get vendors set up, you got to get speakers set up. You know, Eh, yeah, and he does all this by himself.
yeah,
You
not to mention that he probably has to spend like hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, getting some of these vendors out here.
well, I don't know.
Yeah,
They
I
pay
could be
him.
wrong.
The vendors usually pay him for the table,
Yeah,
and then it's getting the speakers to come out and speak. That would be the hardest part,
hmm
because I've already seen him like make posts. He's got so much space left and stuff, but I don't know if I could ever do that. Somebody, a couple years ago, I was in a different position for this show, and he was telling me we should start one here.
yeah. There was surprisingly only twice so far. That doesn't mean that this can happen again for me in the future. But so far as like being a vendor or a speaker, that's only happened to me twice. And of course, I'm not asking for money or anything like that. I'm always going to be free. Um,
Well,
yeah,
usually that's what it is. I mean, the
yeah,
only thing Chad Lewis gets paid for going out there and being a speaker to that one. Jack couldn't afford to keep doing that, paying all the vendors. It's their way, and I would do it too. But I've only been asked once, and I did it, and then I haven't been asked again. But I was a speaker. What was that? 2 years ago, 3 years ago at the Milwaukee Paracon.
hmm
Talking about the Beast of Bray Road.
Well, that was kind of similar because, like, the two times when I was called to be a speaker, one of which unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it out, which I'll get to shortly. The first time that I ever became a speaker, ironically, was at one of Jack's events. Although the event that he had, yeah, it was pretty much the same event as the Chicago Paranormal Convention in June, but this was one that actually occurred in October. And what made it easier for me too was that not only was I a speaker for the first time, but more importantly, it was the first time ever that it was kind of like an actual on-stage episode of Nick Files because I was presenting one of my presentations at this event. So, which was great for me because I was able to kind of read something while I was able to explain everything to everybody, and I am still surprised to this day how much of a success it was. And what I mean by that was like when I first started speaking, there was only like two people that were apart from my parents that were there who were helping me out, setting this up. Apart from my parents, there was literally only two people that showed up,
Oh,
sitting down. But I thought, but and some people would think, well, that sounds pretty bad. You know what? That was fine with me because I'm thinking that's great because I don't have to start off with a huge crowd.
hmm.
Let it build up, and that kind of makes things easier because as you can imagine, I was nervous as hell. I had huge anxiety going through
I
like
can
stage fright.
imagine because I have stage fright,
Yeah, I do too.
you
So,
know, and the first time there was like a get together in Madison with just I was part of the Wisconsin Podcast Association. Okay. And there was like a get together meet and greet thing, in Madison. And you had to get up and say who you were in your podcast and stuff, right? That was the
mhm.
first time I had to try stuff like that, talk in front of, and it was a big crowd. I mean, there was like 20, 30 people there plus the bar, the people in the bar.
Right, right,
You know. So, so I got through that okay because somebody was standing right next to me, you know.
right.
Then at the
It's
Milwaukee
it.
Paracon, that thing started out, there was like, 20 people in the room when it started, maybe 30, most of the seats were filled. So my anxiety got the best of me. But again, I wasn't alone up on stage. I had the owner of the property with me, Lee Hample,
Mhm.
and but when it was over, I had people coming up. Oh, I really liked what you did. I really liked your talk, and you were better than the first one talking about Bray Road, you know, and that kind of made it easier. So I figure if maybe someday I ever get asked, I might do it again.
Well, and
I've
that was
had
kind of the
dining
same.
tables, so quite
Well,
often.
that was kind of the same thing for me because like when I also became a speaker for the first time, again with a slideshow that I created prior, which not only helped me get through the entire experience, but also something that even though I was doing it completely on my own, still something I could rely on. It's weird how sometimes when you're about to involve yourself with something that um, you're going to be facing like a whole lot of people with. And then once you actually proceed it, it's like all of a sudden that anxiety just disappears. Like all of a sudden you're fine. But more importantly too, like when I said when it started with two people, it just made it a lot more easier because that was the other thing too was I think because I was the very first speaker at that event. I guess I kind of thought that if there was going to be a lot of people at this event, like that were going to come see me, it would happen immediately. But surprisingly, it didn't. And that's what made, and as I was speaking, and I only spoke for an hour. Now, ironically, well, not surprisingly, I did have the entire experience filmed. It was broadcasted here on this network, and although you can't see the audience clearly, from what I can tell you, from what I can recall, was like throughout the entire hour that I was speaking, that audience grew, and by the time it was all over, I would have to say there must have been because this was kind of more of like a classroom like setting. Um, I would have to say there was at least about a good 40, maybe almost 50 people that I was
Well,
speaking with near the end. So, and they, as far as I'm concerned, they loved it. In fact, even one of them brought their kids with. They, I still remember this even a few years later. Um, even though this was kind of a slight, because what I was talking about was actually the top. It was either top 10 or top 15 most famous creepy
hi,
pasta stories.
Braxton.
Oh, hey Braxton, good to see you. Yeah, it was like top 10 or top 15 creepy like most popular creepy pasta legends. And when we got to a particular legend, I think it was on the what's the legend that's called the Russian sleep experiment, which that is a messed up story if you ever look into it. It's creepy as hell. They contrary to what you would think, it's not based on a true story, but they kind of make it almost like as I would kind of say like a post World War II experiment that goes terribly wrong. That's the best way I could describe it.
Well,
But as
it
I'm
might have been based on, there was a lot of experiments going on, you know,
yeah, well
and
even though the yeah I was
it
gonna say
might
even
have
though the
some truth to it.
Well, and that's the other thing too. Even though the exact story itself may not be true, it does base itself off from like what happened back then, throughout Germany and Russia during World War II. So there is, so you're right, there is probably some basis on it, but
Well,
nonetheless,
people people tend to use real life as a basis for a lot of things. I mean, look at the movies. Look at our movies, especially the horror genre. Okay, just
Mhm.
for an example, look how many movies are based on Ed Gein.
Oh yeah, there's so many of them,
You know,
like
Psycho,
Psycho, Silence of the Lambs, Texas Chainsaw
The
Massacre,
Massacre.
especially.
And just that character Leatherface, was based on him. And then they
Mhm.
say that Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original one from like 1970 something, early 70s,
1974.
yeah, they say this is based on a true story, at
And
the
it
beginning. But you don't know if that's like something real or that's just something added for effect.
well, it's interesting. There was only like, and this goes back to the slideshow. I only had like near the end of the slideshow, I was expecting people were going to have a lot of questions for me. Surprisingly, I only had one question involved. And this kind of basically goes along with what we're talking about is that because somebody asked me, and you could hear it in the video too, of like where someone got the idea of where these creepypasta stories come from. Even like, and when we're also talking, we're even talking about things like even Slender Man or Jeff the Killer, to name a few, like the most famous among them. And my answer to that was the creepypasta legends, when you really look into it, is truly nothing really different or special compared to previous like scary or ghost stories that we've been talking about. Because when you think about it too with creepypasta, even though that's only been made within the last 10, 15 years, it's just another chapter of something that we have been constantly doing for thousands of years. And when it comes to, like with my audiobooks that I do, the Scary Stories franchise that I always advertise about, a lot of those stories, in some way, shape, or form, even if they are entirely fictional from the start, they obviously came from something that really happened. In fact, even some of my Scary Stories books, even before you get started reading some of these stories, they usually will say there is kind of a shred of truth to these stories, even if they are entirely fictional,
Yeah,
because it's usually either someone that it was something that somebody experienced or had encountered or something like that. It's just another shred of history. So the way how I even said it too was very well said, and I'll never forget after I answered it and after when I ended, I had a huge and also I was gonna say at the end of of my slideshow, a few minutes later when I was talking with Jack and also some of the vendors, that same like I said, there was a guy who walked in during the slideshow. He had his daughter with. She was only probably about like 7 or 8 years old at the time, and I was a little bit. I'm not going to lie. I was a little bit nervous because, like I said, when I was getting to the Russian sleep experiment legend, it's a pretty, like I said, it's a pretty graphic and disturbing legend. I was like, I was not opposed to anybody bringing their kids with, but I just had to tell them saying, hey, just so you know, this is it's going to be kind of messed up what you and your daughter's about to hear. But what was funny was, again, a few minutes after I was done, that same little girl, she literally came up to me and she's like, literally, she like comes up and goes like, um, "Oh, I loved your slideshow. All those stories were great."
mm,
And I thought to myself, wow, like, well, I mean, even though, I mean, I didn't actually say this to her, but in my head, I'm like, even though you were probably a little bit too young to see these stories, I appreciate it either way. So, um, that obviously was a great turnout when I was a first
yeah,
time speaker.
yeah.
And,
So
oh, go ahead, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, they got the younger generation. You go back in the 70s, you wouldn't see this. Everybody be wanting to commit you to the insane asylum or the nut house because you're crazy, right? I don't know how
Correct.
Dale made it all this time, because he was doing this in the 70s. But today, it seems like the paranormal and the stories that we tell are getting more and more acceptable to the public
Yeah.
eye.
Well, and
It's
that's something that I'm glad to be seeing.
But at
And
the same
furthermore,
time, it damages us because everybody's got their little computer in their hands, and camera, so everybody's taking pictures and saying, "Oh, this is a UFO," and a lot of those I've kind of, you know, but it's interesting, because everybody's seeing stuff now. It's getting more and more popular. People are taking pictures, you know. I mean, look, you mentioned what was the Slender Man?
oh, Slender Man. Yeah, yeah,
That woman just got convicted recently of a killing of her friend or something
yeah,
because of Slender Man, and they were just they transferred her to one place, and they're like, not in my backyard, and yeah, that's still been a mess because they transferred her to Sun Prairie, and Sun Prairie didn't want her, and she escaped,
yep.
got
That's what I recently heard.
got recaptured, and now she's, I don't know where she is. I forgot, but she's no longer in Sun Prairie because they were putting her in like a halfway house or a minimum security thing in Sun Prairie. And it's like
Yeah,
Jesus
she was
Christ.
charged with she was recently charged with escaping the facility. So now she's pretty much locked back up. And of course, as a reminder, I still remember when that all occurred. Of course, it was actually involved. That was when she and her friend, they were two 12-year-old girls that were trying to kill their
Yeah,
friend. And that was just an absolutely brutal attack. And I'll never forget because before that, I was a huge fan of Slender Man. I mean, I still am to some degree, but after when that whole stabbing occurred in Waukesha, that really shook a lot of us to our core. And at that time too, when you really think about it, I was not very much older than those kids because that happened back in 2014. They were only 12. I mean, yes, I was an adult. I was 21, but still, I wasn't even 10 years over them. It was just like, geez, like literally, I was just a few years older than they were. And for them to commit such a violent crime like that for a character like that, it still chills me. And I don't know if you know this too, because this was the most notorious. Most people don't realize that there were actually three other similar crimes that followed after the Waukesha stabbing, if you didn't know that.
no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're I'm keeping it real short. Um,
But
from what
that's
I can re
Waukesha.
yeah, from what I can remember was I don't remember which one occurred first, but in Florida, a 14-year-old girl actually tried to set her house on fire with her mother and her baby brother inside. Thankfully they got out. They managed to escape. And shortly after that, she was arrested and they found like the Slender Man paraphernalia in her possession. And then the third time it occurred, this was the only one that occurred with adults. This happened this time in Las Vegas, Nevada, where it was not necessarily the same exact situation, but it was similar. I think it was involved in like a robbery or something like that. It was involving a couple, and the boyfriend of the couple was wearing a Slender Man outfit. Obviously, that was probably more or less to conceal his identity so no one could see him. And this was also the only time where death was involved because when the police and SWAT, surrounded them, they locked themselves. I think it was like in a closet of some sort, knowing that they had no way to escape. They ended up taking their own lives. They killed themselves. And then the third and final uh, similar situation like this was once again involving this time a 13-year-old. and I think he tried to stab his mother. And once again, they found fascinations and paraphernalia of Slender Man with them. So that one up in Wisconsin was not an isolated event. At least three other incidents followed that year. So in total, there were four different crimes involving Slender Man.
Yeah, it's sad that it had to come down to things like that. Mm.
It really
But
did.
our
And for the
paranormal
14-year,
world, though, has
yeah,
gotten bigger and more people accepting it because, I see when we go to those paranormal conventions, you see people from all walks of life. You
that's
know,
correct.
I've seen old ladies going to these things, barely can walk. They get their walker out of their car and
And they're still enjoying
and
them.
and they're
And
enjoying these things. And you think, they'd be doing this 10, 20 years ago? Probably not. It's gotten a lot more acceptable over the years. And I'm glad it
well,
has in one aspect, because it makes things easier to say get into a location or whatever. But at the same time, you got the people that are all about the money, and then we're going to charge you more than you can imagine just to visit for a few hours.
there was one Paracon that did that. I think that was, yeah, it was last year. And this was one of the few Paracons out there that I thought, you know what, it's not even worth going to this. And I even found out some of the big names were not attending it because of the overall, like, just unbelievable prices that they were asking.
Well,
And it was
I
it
got a
was the
rule. I don't
what's
pay
that?
more than 20. I got a rule. I don't pay more than $25 to
Oh,
attend one.
this one was asking. I don't even think I still know the full price of what it was, but whatever it was just absolutely insane.
Yeah,
It
I've seen.
was the Yeah, it was the Missouri Paracon. So from what I can remember was that um, after when the Michigan Paracon had their last one back in 2024, I know they said it was going to be the last one that they were going to have. But I start seeing these advertisements, one, two, three, that all said, "Am I Paracon?" I thought, well, that's kind of strange. Like, why does it say? Because
Yeah, I
they
saw
said
those.
coming soon. Yeah, I saw that. I'm like, coming 2025. I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, what's that supposed to mean? Because that's usually the typical name for the Michigan Paracon.
Right.
Well, it turned out that Missouri, I guess, was going to try to step in. And I guess this was going to be kind of I guess, if you will, necessary replacement con for Michigan, which, of course, that made sense to me because, just like Michigan, that's Missouri starts with the same exact
Yeah.
letters. So it made sense to me. But one of the prices I heard, which were like, I think it was like $300, even just like, and that alone was even just getting a vendor table. That was just absolutely insane. And yet they were still asking for more. I think the fight, because at one point I was sitting with Jenny Davis and Larry Eisler after the event was over, and we were discussing about it. And I think the final full count I think the final full count of the full price, like for everything, the vendor table, the hotel, even being a speaker, it came out to, like, I'm not even joking, like almost $1,500,
I believe
like
it
just to be there.
because, I that's like I said, I've got a rule that I don't pay any more than $25 to go and go to these paracons or comic cons for that matter, you know, and I don't pay more than like $75 for a vendor table.
Right. Which,
Because you
that
got to
makes
try to
sense.
make the money you spend, you got to try to make that back.
That's
And if
right.
I'm going to pay $75, you better have one hell of a crowd, you know,
Exactly.
for me to make my money back. You
Yeah. I mean, it's just, and the fact that you had to pay $1,500 for that, that's like, I mean, when I heard the price, when Jenny and Larry told me that, I was thinking, if they were inviting me and they were expecting to say, I mean, if they were going to invite me to a Paracon and Larry say, well, you're going to have to pay for all this for yourself. We can't
know,
cover any of it. I would literally have no problem, but to tell them, first off, not two things. One thing I would say is not in your life, and two, I would simply tell them they can kiss my ass because
Yeah.
there's no way I'm paying that kind of money.
See,
I mean,
I've
at
got
that point,
rules like
using that kind of price, I'd rather be paying it for like a new phone or something than paying just to show up for like a day or two. So, it's just to me it's just a waste of money and time. So to
yeah, it
go
is.
out to something like to go out to something like that, especially for asking that kind of price, it's just not worth it.
Wait,
See, like,
this is probably gotta go first.
doesn't how it goes. He files reports on that. Her paranormal activity pauses. Oh God. Kate is
Very
she's
polite. Demons admit they aren't real.
yeah. they she's what she's referring to is she's making one of the most interesting yeah. Wait. Can you put that back up? I just gotta see that. He is the most interesting paranormal network in the thing, bro. She's doing the
She's
most
doing what
interesting
you
man in
do
the
for
world
Tom.
comments. The same
Yeah,
thing I do with Tom's.
yeah. I
I
kind of
don't
got
know.
that. I thought she was supposed to be studying.
Yeah. Uh, I don't know.
Anyway,
I was supposed to.
it's about that time we gotta go.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to say this before we go. In response to Kate's comments, I don't always investigate, but when I do, um, damn it, I should have practiced this before I got on. Um, okay, I'll just say this for now because this could change because I just got started with this. I don't always investigate, but when I do, I prefer to be like Nicopedia. Stay stay ghosty, my friends.
Oh, I see. Well, anyway, good night. Thank you all for watching,
Yeah.
and we'll miss you on Fear Fans.
But hey, you can always have me back on this show anytime you need a guest. I'm more than happy to do
Yeah,
it. This was fun. And as
it's
usual, Joe,
always
thank you
fun
very much for
talking to
having
you.
me on.
I could go on talking to you for hours, but
Yeah,
we
I
only
could do the
have that
same, but
time. We're gonna overlap somebody, I'm sure. Um,
well, ironically, that would be supernatural talk. So,
like
obviously,
7, isn't it?
listen, what's that?
That comes up in like 45 minutes.
Yeah, so clearly, less than an hour from now, I got to be on another show. So
So
you
give you
guys can
time to
find me
eat.
there next.
Yeah. All right. So stay safe and remember, anything's possible.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Joe.